Hello, this is my second last video in the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge. I'm pretty sure our last one is a live stream, and then there's two more from Ursula, and one more from me after this. Wow. Today I'm going to be talking about moving on to your second project, and I'm assuming most of you aren't at this phase, but I'm totally at this phase right now. So I recently finished Honey Walls, and Honey Walls isn't a comic, but it is a novel. It's not on stores yet, but I sat down and I packed 132 orders and I sent them off, and slowly they should be arriving at people's homes, and that's really exciting. And then I have to put it on like the store page and all that fun stuff. But for the most part, it's kind of creative wise, I'm done. And some people have noticed that I've been pretty down recently. One part of that is definitely like exhausting doing the 100 days on top of running a Kickstarter. And the second part of that is just like ending a project really sucks. It's wonderful for like 0.5 of a second, and then it's kind of depressing, at least for me. Moving on to second projects is kind of like a big deal, and it's a lot of like emotional work, I think, to do it. I think that finishing projects, like, I know it's been described as taking your favorite child out into the yard and shooting them. Terrible analogy, but also very true. It's a unique feeling, and it's kind of leaves you feeling weird and empty, and at the same time awesome. It's really hard to explain entirely. And so since finishing Honey Walls, I've had to move right into my next project, which is Moonlight. And Moonlight is an anthology, so it's a little bit easier to move into for me because it is not so much creative work rather than working. Well, there's some creative aspects to it, but it's not like writing a story type creative. I don't have to get right back on the creation train, and I think that's very helpful. And I think that's sort of like my first tip to kind of moving on to your next project is to take time away, and at the very least, do work that isn't super related to your kind of like preferred art. Like if you finish a comic, don't go right into another comic. I've always find that it's super kind of difficult to move right into creating something, because usually you're pretty drained and you might not give it your all. Maybe there's some people where moving straight into something is exactly what they need. But for me, I always need some time off, and I need to work on something either not creative or a different type of creativity. Like I might start a knitting project. I'm terrible at knitting. Or I might like do a puzzle. I just do something to occupy my brain until I'm kind of ready to get back on the creation train. Choo choo. I think finishing things always has this feeling to it, like regardless of if it's like the complete end of something or if it's just like an arc. Like personally, I always feel this feeling after I get a volume out. And I think what kind of drives that is that there's just this rush of like emotions when you're completing something, and it's like being full of caffeine and then you crash afterwards when like all of the excitement suddenly stops and you don't have things to do anymore, and you're like, what is this? And if you try to continue that like caffeine high, that like creating thing high, you eventually burn out. So yeah, be careful about that. This is not a structured video. I'm very sorry if you're expecting something structured. I am at the end of a project here, and I'm very tired. And yeah, it's really difficult to move on to something new. And I think Ursula brought this up in a previous video, but it's a really good idea to like sit down and celebrate. I'm gonna have some sort of celebration for completing Honey Walls, because I got honey in the mail. I got it like honeycomb because it's honeycomb season. It's perfect. And I'm going to have honey and mead, and I'm going to eat cheese, and it's going to be great. But it's also going to be sad because it's over, and you can't help but feeling sad. I know a lot of people have told me like to just not feel sad about that and just be happy you finished things. But you know what? It's okay to feel however you feel at the end of things. You don't have to be elated to be done, because you know what? It's difficult. I think I felt this feeling before in other situations. I think like finishing like school is a very similar feeling, because if you're like in school for all of your life and then you get out and you're done, you're like, what is this? And if it's a really big project that took you multiple years, it'll definitely have that feeling, because your whole life kind of shifts. Like for me, I've been working on Honey Walls for 12 years and now it exists. And it's like, whoa, heck, now what? Time to move on to other projects. No, you can't do that. It's like when your dog passes away. You don't just immediately get a new dog. Not everyone. Some people, that's exactly what they need to cope. They need like a new dog in their life. And it's perfectly reasonable to get a new dog in your life. But if you're not ready to get a new puppy because you want to just kind of mourn the old one, and it's definitely a similar feeling when you finish something like that, because it's a chapter of your life that you're closing, like, go ahead and mourn the heck out of it. I'm just here basically to say it's okay to not be super happy peppy, and it's okay to not roll into your other project. Other recommendations for starting a second project is be careful about your expectations for your new project. Yeah, be careful about your expectations for your new project, because I had this when finishing Pretty Mouth. Pretty Mouth was like my second comic and kind of my first to hit it, quote unquote, kind of big. It was like the one that people were actually reading. Like no one was reading Sovereign, but everyone was reading Pretty Mouth, and it was really weird. Probably because it was BL. It was kind of calculated. I figured BL would do better, and I was like, heck, let's do BL, even though it's kind of a weird take on BL. It's not super cutesy. But anyways, Pretty Much hit it big. It was huge. It was great. And then I was like, okay, let's do Magpie. Same universe. People are going to be excited. And people weren't that hyped about Magpie. It's been a very slow build to get people interested and into Magpie. And man, like that kind of sucks. And it can kind of take the steam out of your steam train. It can take the wind out of your sails. And you just got to remember that your next project is its own unique little baby. It's a new child. It's going to have new issues. It's going to be different. It might blow up big, or it might peter out. And, either one is fine. And you just got to realize that each project is different. It doesn't say anything about you as a writer, as a creator. Some projects just resonate with people and some don't. And what matters is how you feel about the project. One of like the most depressing and exciting thing and kind of nice things I've heard is from like some people who are New York Times bestsellers, and some years they get rejected like a lot, just like anyone else, I think it was like 6 times this one person got rejected. And you know what? It happens to the best of us, okay? That's kind of the moral of the story, is like sometimes it's just not the time for a book, or sometimes it's just not the kind of book that everyone's gonna love. And that's okay. And just don't worry about that. It's not about you. You haven't declined as a writer or something. It's fine. You haven't declined as an artist. It just means like different stories, different strokes for different folks. And also, once you've been on a comic or something for so long, starting up a second one, like, you often forget what it's like to start kind of from square one, and you got to realize that you are at square one. Like, even if you have a big audience, as you slowly build things up, people are slowly going to get interested in the story, just like they did with your previous stories. It's just like, just because like everyone loves your previous work doesn't mean they're immediately going to be invested in your new work. And that's okay. So don't worry about it. And you know what? feel all your feelings. That's the moral of the story. And continue trucking along. I believe in you. Move on to your next project. You are an amazing person. And thank you so much for watching all of these videos. Every single one of them. Y'all are the most lovely people. And you brighten up my day, even when I'm in kind of a funk. So thank you very much. I'll talk to you again in my last video, and I guess on the final live stream. Okay, goodbye.